My wife just told me that she was in Estes Park and she jaywalked and an officer pulled her aside on the street or on the sidewalk, whatever, and I guess was going to try to give her a ticket, and two sovereigns walked up and was videotaping the interaction, and they were standing between her and the officer. And my wife was trying to get a hold of me, and she said that she couldn't get a hold of me, and the officer admitted to having a scrambler. So I'm gonna call Estes Park regarding whether they have scramblers or not, because this is a big concern. I mean, the government can't be trusted already as it is, and we need to videotape. We need to call other people to confirm what we're going through, and if they're scrambling our messages, our calls and texts, that's just taking away more of our security. So I'm calling Estes Park Police Department, and I'm going to tell them what's going on. Hi, Andrew. I have a question. Do you guys have scramblers in your pocket, the policemen? And do they scramble people's phones, like when they're next to people, like say if they're next to somebody that they are questioning?
I've actually never even heard of such a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
So you haven't heard of it? You haven't heard of Estes Park officers doing that or having those?
No, I have not. I have an officer in the building right now. Would you like to?
Yeah, please.
Okay, what's your name?
My name's Dwayne Brothwell.
Okay, hold on, Dwayne, okay?
Okay. I guess they have me on hold.
Okay, Dwayne, I'm going to put you through an officer, okay? Hold on 1 second.
Thank you. Well, he never heard of it, so interesting.
Hello, this is Officer Felsinger.
Hi, officer. My wife said she was just pulled aside up in Estes Park for jaywalking, and she was trying to get a hold of me. This is what my wife said, and she said that one of the officers had a scrambler in his pocket and she couldn't get a hold of me.
Okay. How many officers did she say were there?
One officer.
Okay.
And there was two sovereigns. Do you know what a sovereign is?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a sovereign citizen. You know that, right? You know the difference?
What is the difference? What is...
Well, there's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. I don't know if you're aware of that. Did they teach you that part?
Did who teach me that part?
Well, whoever teaches you the information that you know, how to interact with people that you come in contact with.
Well, I've researched a lot on my own.
Oh, okay.
On soccer.
Okay. Well, when I say sovereign, I don't mean a sovereign citizen, because there's no such thing. A citizen is of the country, and a sovereign, the government is of them. Like the founding of our country, how the people establishes the government, And then when the government ended in bankruptcy, the government owned by international bankers created the citizen. So as long as you're a citizen, there's no such thing as being a sovereign citizen, because you just can't be. A citizen cannot be sovereign. So when I said sovereign, I meant people who are sovereign in according to the founding of our country. So anyway, this officer, I don't know, pulled my wife aside, and she tried contacting me, and the officer admitted that he had a scrambler and she couldn't get a hold of me. So
Okay.
that concerns me, and I want to know what's going on.
Well, I myself didn't have any contact with any party today about jaywalking.
Okay.
I just checked with my partner.
Yeah.
He and I are the only ones working today, and neither of us have had any contact with anybody jaywalking.
Oh, do you guys have scramblers?
We do not carry any scramblers. I'm completely unfamiliar with, I guess, what a scrambler would be.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you know, one of the things that concerns me, and the reason why I'm calling, is because when I interact with an officer, I don't know if you've done your research, but the government's losing credibility. We can't trust you anymore. So what we need to do is we need to have, you know, the interaction filmed, so that way, you know, officers aren't doing something that's unlawful, and, you know, for our protection. So if I'm ever pulled over by a cop, I would like to make sure that there's other cops and hopefully a video camera going, so that way the cop does not step out of his bounds and turn into an animal like they've been doing quite a bit lately. And so that concerns me. You know, if there is scramblers, I'd like to know, because, you know, it's really, I'm scared enough as it is about my safety, and then if that would just be an added issue to be concerned about my safety. So that's why I'm calling, and I do appreciate your time. But you, in fact, do not use scramblers?
No officer on the Estes Park Police Department that I am aware of uses anything that would interfere with an electronic device.
Oh, okay.
Which brings up the concern that if your wife was indeed in Estes Park and contacted by somebody who represented himself as a police officer, it now makes me concerned that there's somebody out there who's identifying themselves as a police officer.
Yeah.
That indeed is not.
Yeah, well, I guess according to my wife, they escorted the officer back. The officer apologized. And, I mean, this is, you know, I don't know. This is what my wife said. So I'm only going by what she told me.
Is she back home yet?
No. She just called me like 20 minutes ago telling me what happened.
Huh.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, huh?
The two officers on the street today that are legitimate police officers, I've spoken with my partner and then myself. Neither of us have contacted anybody for jaywalking.
Oh, okay.
So actually, if you're interested in getting back in touch with your wife to see if she can call us so she can describe this guy to us.
Yeah.
Because if he's identifying himself as a police officer and contacting people for jaywalking, that concerns me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. Cool. Yeah, I'll talk with her and see what we could figure out.
Okay.
All right. And what is your name again?
Greg Filsinger.
Okay, Greg. I appreciate your time.
My dispatcher said your name was Dwayne?
Dwayne Brothwell. Yeah, I do a lot of videos. Dwayne Brothwell. Brothwell.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of videos. You know, I've been asking government questions. They're like, you know, to me it sounds like they're guilty of something because they never cooperate with me and they never answer my questions. I mean, you've been pretty nice. I mean, but the line of questioning that I have given you is not of such that you would be guilty of any wrongdoing. If I was to do that, you may be a little resistant, but...
Coincidentally, at the time of your call, I was doing research
Wow. Yeah. Just type in my my book. I wrote a book. It's called Mystery Babylon Finally Revealed.
Are you familiar with 4409?
No, I'm not. What is that all about?
Internet YouTube blogger who blogs on and documents videos these basically rogue police officers who do step out of their bounds.
Never heard of it.
Okay, well, it's one of those YouTube vortexes that I get sucked into. Like, I watch a video and then it gives me 12 more recommended videos. And everything from wrongful shootings committed by police officers to violation of constitutional rights.
Right.
And I like to learn from others' mistakes before I make a mistake myself.
Yeah.
So I kind of get sucked into it, and it is scary that there are so many documented cases of officers stepping out of their bounds. So
Yeah.
that's a shame. I feel bad that, I mean, you're concerned, and you're one of hundreds of thousands of people who are concerned and don't feel safe, and that's because of these officers who are people who wear a badge and, you know, have no business doing so.
Well, you know, I'm getting to the point where I saw that video recently about that guy in New York City. You know, he was choked out and killed. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, somebody should have punched that guy in the head. It would have saved that man's life.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm getting to that point now where if I see an officer beating somebody up, you know, I mean, you know, forgive me, but I feel like I have to protect that person. And I know that's, you know, in your eyes, that may sound kind of, you know, maybe illegal, which it is illegal. Is it lawful? Now that's another question. But, you know, if you guys are indeed, you know, here for our safety, which, you know, Supreme Court ruled that it is not your duty to keep us safe. And we know the truth that you're actually just there to make money to keep the corporation going for the international bankers. We know the truth there.
What Supreme ruling was that?
I'm not sure. You know, I'm more into the Bible, so I don't get off into these, you know, I call them like secondary fields of information, because, you know, I already know common sense says it, you know, I try to do common sense, you know, and if you want to research it, you're welcome to research it yourself, but there is a Supreme Court ruling that said that it is not the duty of an officer to keep anyone safe. You know, they use that, and it sounds good, but, you know, it's all deception. You know, like the Social Security, for example, they'll say that you get Social Security, which is true. You get Social Security benefits if you have a Social Security card and birth certificate. But what they don't tell you is that you're giving up your rights and property. See? So it's true, but yet they're using a deception to take your rights and property, and that is the definition of fraud. So, you know, when officers say that they're keeping you safe, that's really a fraud, because they're really there to make money.
I actually signed up to keep people safe.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I know your intentions are good, but if you study the system, the Constitution says that no state shall coin money on anything but gold and silver for the payment of debts. Well, we're not using gold and silver, so we're using fiat currency. That's, you know, that's against the law. And, you know, Thomas Jefferson even said, the central bank is an institution of the most deadly hostility existing against the forms and principles of our Constitution. He said, if the American people ever allow a private bank, which is the Federal Reserve, to issue our currency, which is fake money, that our children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. He said, banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. So this banking institution is taking our liberties, and people don't understand that. They don't understand that as long as we're using this dollar, we're under their control. and we have no rights. And the thing is that if we were using gold and silver, you couldn't exist. So in actuality, the reason you exist is because we're able to use fiat currency, which has value at the expense of our children, because we can't pay our debt, so we have to depend on our children's federal income tax to pay for the debt that we're incurring in this generation. And Thomas Jefferson called that a swindler. So actually, this government is illegitimate, they're swindlers, and they're breaking the law. Because if you weren't breaking the law, then you would be using gold and silver. But, the Constitution does allow for a right to contract. So if you want to contract your rights away and you want to live in a system that is being funded at the expense of your children, you have that right to do so because it's your children. You can sign them away through the birth certificate if you want because it's your children. And when you grow up, you can contract your life away, and that's perfectly constitutional. But when you try to force another man into your system, that is unconstitutional. That's tyranny.
You see, Dwayne, I'm kind of like a simple guy. I like the live and let live philosophy. However, I chose this course of employment because not everybody abides by the live and let live. So if somebody breaks into sweet old lady's house and steals her grandmother's jewelry, and I mean that's where we're called, and I step in. And
yeah, I understand your point there, but yet, if you want to really get down to it, you're getting paid by a taxpayer, and I don't really want to pay your wages because, frankly, you're doing a lot more than just protecting that old lady. You're also giving people citations for things that are making the government money. We should have the freedom to build a house.
What citations have I issued?
Well,
you about building a house?
Well, I'm just saying that, Thomas Jefferson said, the policy of the American government is to leave their citizens free, neither aiding them nor restraining them in their pursuits. When we build a house, we have to get a permit according to your legal system. You're aiding us. You're protecting us. You're making sure our house is built right. But Thomas Jefferson said that is not the policy of the American government. So obviously you're something else other than the American government. You're called the United States Corporation enforcing codes and statutes. You're a business. You're no longer a country. And he also said, there was another one. I see future happiness for Americans if they can keep the government from wasting the labors of the people in the pretense of taking care of them. See, and that's what you guys are doing.
Okay.
You're taking our,
guys, which is kind of generalizing, which is, I mean, a little naive on your part.
Well, I'm not going to argue that right now because we just don't have time. But, I've studied this. I've researched quite a bit. The Lord has shown me, deep things of His Word and why our country's done. I mean, if you look around the country right now, people are protesting everywhere. I'm getting ready to go out and start doing some protesting. I'm sick of it. I've called Mark Udall, the senator. I've called Cory Gardner. I've asked them to interact with me. I've even asked the police chief here to interact with me. And nobody wants to interact with me.
The chief of police here in Estes?
No, here in Greeley, Colorado.
Okay.
But nobody wants to interact with me. Okay. Nobody wants to answer my question. Why didn't they tell us that we're giving up our rights and we are accepting privileges when we sign to the birth certificate and social security card? If they're so proud of this system, why didn't they teach us that? Because it's a fraud. Because, of course, anybody in their right mind is not going to sign their rights away. I mean, yeah, some people will, but it's not something that people want to share on the rooftop saying, yeah, give up your rights today. Sign your name to the Social Security card. That's how come they hide it, because it's a shameful thing. Nobody wants to say, yeah, well, we're going to tax you, but you know, we don't have to tax you, and you're voluntarily going to give up your taxes when you sign to this Social Security card and birth certificate. The only people that are taxed are the ones that have these instruments.
So you're not taxed?
No.
Because you don't have a Social Security
Right.
card?
Exactly.
So did you renounce your citizenship?
Actually, I rescinded my contract. Do you know what that means?
The same thing I just said?
Basically.
Okay.
You remember I was telling you that according to the Constitution, the people establishes the government?
Uh-huh.
But when the government and this country ended in bankruptcy...
So you don't pay any taxes at all, Dwayne?
Oh yeah, a few taxes, but not income tax, because the Federal Reserve doesn't own me. They own you, because you have a birth certificate and Social Security card, obviously, because you work for the Estes Police Department.
Right.
So you have to be taxed on your income, which means that you're a slave.
Greeley's got a pretty bad gang problem. Do you agree with that?
What?
Greeley has a pretty bad gang problem.
Oh yes, I do agree with that one. Yeah.
Do you believe, or can you conceive a little bit
Well,
the fact that the Greeley Police Department helps to thwart some of that gang activity?
well, you know,
You safe and able to go to the store and not being robbed and mugged right outside your own home?
you know, one thing that a lot of people in general does not understand the system. The system that the United States Corporation has today creates an environment for criminals to thrive. And you're going to have a hard time with that concept because you don't understand fully how this system works. You don't understand fully, according to the Bible, what is right and wrong. When a nation starts to borrow money, they're a fallen nation. And it creates an atmosphere for gangs to prosper. It creates an atmosphere for corrupt leaders. Our leaders are corrupted. You know, for one reason, you know, our forefathers said a body of men that is not held accountable to anybody ought not be trusted by anyone. And
It's been this way.
huh?
How long has it been this way?
Well, you know, it's a gradual devolve. I don't know what the word is, but you know, it's digressing. It's from one generation to the other, and one of the signs was, if you study the history of the bank, and you understand God's word and borrowing, you can actually see how the bankers have got a foothold in this country and how they're in control. They issue our currency. They control this country, and it didn't start at the beginning because we had gold and silver. It was done in increments, in small little steps, until we came to the point that we're at today. I mean, if you watch my videos, you know, type in, you know, Google Mystery Babylon Finally Revealed, and you'll see my videos. You know, I do a lot of videos. I mean, the monster drink. I mean, Satan knows the system, you know, better than any person. So they can influence people. You know, Satan can influence people to do some pretty wild things. And if you watch my video about the monster drink, it's a riddle. And it's to me, it's pretty plain and simple that, you know, it's the Babylonian system, which is commerce, you know, banking and commerce.
Now, I have a quick statement which will be followed by a question.
Okay.
Okay. So, I do have kids. I'm raising kids.
Okay.
Something I stress to them
Uh-huh.
through their day-to-day life is don't come to me with a problem without a solution. That means if your brother took your favorite ball, don't come to me without offering a solution. So that makes them think of finding a logical solution to the problem before they start making verbal complaints. My question to you, Dwayne, is you've pointed out a problem. Do you have a solution, a logical solution?
Yeah.
What is a logical solution? Because I agree, there's a problem. It's been a problem.
Yeah.
What is the solution?
Well, Jeremiah 50 verse 2 says, raise up a banner and publish among the nations and hold nothing back but say Babylon is captured. So that's one way. That's what I do with my videos. You know, I say we've already won. We've already won the battle because it's already written in God's word. We've already won. You know, just like our forefathers won. And it only took 3% of them. You know, our population isn't big, but it only took 3% of the people who were for the revolution to actually win the revolution. So our population is pretty small, you know, considering that we've already won. It doesn't matter what anybody says or anything, we've already won. So my solution is just to continue doing what God wants me to do, and that is educating people. Even Thomas Jefferson said, educate and inform the mass of people, for they are our only hope for the preservation of our liberty. And he said, and that's, you know, in the Bible, Proverbs, I believe it's 12:7 or 15:7, it says, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, not so the heart of a fool. So my job is to educate people, use common sense, ask questions, because it's common sense that if an officer is trying to impose his will on you, that officer very well know by what process does he have that authority. And the problem is that the officer doesn't know, and neither do most people. But when the problem that I find is that when you do find out how the officer came to that point where he has power over the people, you find that it's fraud, because the Social Security card and birth certificate was the full details of those contracts was never disclosed to the people. The people were never told that they were giving up their rights. They were never told that. And that's fraud. Because we had rights and we were the kings. But at the same time, bankrupted people are easily deceived anyway. So you could tell a bankrupted person they're giving up their rights, and heck, they don't give a damn. They don't know what rights are. They don't even consider what their rights are. And that's the state of our country, is we're bankrupted with the evidence of the $17 trillion debt. I mean, that's the evidence that we're bankrupt. And then we pay federal income tax to pay it back, and we don't even know by what process that happened. Most people don't know. They say, well, the courts and the law and blah, 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 but they don't know by what process and what is the truth about the system. Have you ever heard of Edward Mandell House?
No.
That's a really good quote. It'll sum up everything. It's called Edward Mandell House. He was a banking advisor to Woodrow Wilson in 1913 at the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. And he said, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people. Biological property, of course, is your children. You know, that's through the birth certificate. So that's how you register your biological property. In other words, when you register them, basically what you're doing is you're transferring ownership. That's what register means, a transfer of ownership.
That seems to me like a pretty large leap. I mean...
Well, yeah, it would to you, because you don't understand the full inner workings of the system.
My children's birth certificate, in which my wife and I have both signed, I didn't there's nowhere on there that gives transfer of ownership.
I know. That's why it's a fraud there, officer. Because you were never told that. If you look on the birth certificate, it's written on banknote paper. In other words, you're traded on the New York Stock Exchange because through that birth certificate and that capital letter name that's on that birth certificate, you are now, whenever you sign to it, you are now a corporation doing business with the international bankers.
The capital letter name?
Yes.
Meaning what?
Well, it means somebody's capitalizing on you in two ways. They're taking advantage of you and they're turning you into capital. That's how the bankers are able, that's how the United States corporation is able to borrow more money, is because people are signing to the birth certificates. That means that they have to pay federal income tax. I'm sorry, what?
I think that's a really far-fetched leap.
Well, I mean, I've done heavy research. Have you?
I've researched, yeah.
Yeah. Well, read that quote from Edward Mandell House. It really, answers a lot of questions, and it also says in there, it says they will be our chattel. In other words, they'll be our slave.
So, and Edward Mandell House, like some type of a prophet who can see into the future?
No, he's actually was a banking advisor to Woodrow Wilson.
So these words that he spoke,
yes.
It looks like he died in 1908.
Yeah, he here.
He spoke over 80 years ago. Compared to events that are happening today, and
yeah, here, hold on. Let me well, this was at the passage of the Federal Reserve Act, and it's through the Federal Reserve that we are slaves to the international bankers. If you listen to this quote, it says that very soon every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. In other words, you've pledged your children for the debt because you have to pay through the birth certificate the federal income tax. In other words, you're voluntarily becoming a slave. It's a whole system of bankruptcy.
If I didn't sign my children's birth certificate, absolutely nothing would change for their future.
Well, that's if that's what you think. It's only knowledge that can give you power. If you do that without the knowledge, of course you're not going to have power. You got to have the knowledge behind the actions that you take. So you just can't not sign your child away. You have to understand what it is before you actually do the action.
So if I renounce their citizenship, I will be able to not pay taxes anymore, and I can have an extra $400 on each paycheck? Or
well, that's something that you're going to have to really research yourself. I know people that that do have jobs, but they don't pay federal income tax. Because you don't have to pay taxes on your labor, it's voluntary. But anyway, this quote, it goes on, it goes, by such methodology we can compel the people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. So in other words, it's through this birth certificate that gives their fake paper money value. That's how they have a chargeback for their fiat paper currency. They lend us fake money, then when we sign to the birth certificate we pay it back. That's what gives it value, is our labor. That's the only honest part of this money system, is our labor is giving this fiat paper value. That's the only honest part of the whole thing. Everything else is a fraud because they never told us nothing. It says every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. Because a lot of people, they think, well, you can't work if you don't have a birth certificate and social security card.
I like to think that some of my federal tax dollars go towards funding our military, which myself, my family, and my fellow citizens.
No, actually, the military isn't even fighting for the interests of freedom or liberty. They're fighting for the agenda of the bankers. And no, even Ronald Reagan said not one red cent of the federal income tax goes to paying for the infrastructure of America. It all goes back to paying the borrowing of the United States.
Well, have you considered running for president and fixing all this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, but you want to know, Ron Paul understood the Federal Reserve and that we need to get rid of them, and you know what? They rejected him. So, you know, you can't tell a nation of fallen people who just simply want to like the enslavement and not even understanding the effects that their system is causing to honest people. And our forefathers understood the system of fiat currency very well, which is why they said no state shall coin money on anything but gold and silver for the payment of debts. That's why they put that into law.
Did you vote for Ron Paul?
Actually, this last time I did not vote because when I went in there, I asked, I can't remember what title he had, but I asked him, you know, hey, can a free man vote? I said, are you familiar with free man? And he goes, well, yeah, I've heard the concepts. And I go, well, can we vote?